The guard had struck Otto Keller hard enough to split his lip. Yet before sunset, the German prisoner crossed the yard, stopped in front of the same man, and thanked him while every witness fell silent, because no one understood what had happened inside the locked grain shed, why the guard suddenly lowered his eyes, or why the camp commander ordered both men taken away before Keller could explain another word. At dawn, Corporal Daniel Mercer opened Barrack 7 and ordered the German prisoners into the yard, where a stolen sack of flour had already delayed breakfast and raised tempers among the guards. When Otto Keller stepped out of line to lift an older prisoner who had collapsed, Mercer shoved him back and ordered him to remain at attention. The older man fell again and struck his shoulder against the frozen ground, so Keller moved a second time and caught him beneath the arms before his head hit the stones. Mercer crossed the yard, pulled Keller away, and struck him across the mouth, while Sergeant Lewis marked the interruption as deliberate disobedience. Lewis searched Keller's coat and found a narrow strip of white cloth sewn inside the lining, the same material used to tie the missing flour sack. Keller explained that the cloth had come from the infirmary, but Lewis ordered him taken to the grain shed and warned that every prisoner in his barrack would lose food unless he named an accomplice. Inside the shed, Mercer placed the torn sack on a crate and demanded an answer, while Keller examined the flour scattered across the floor. He pointed toward a muddy wheel mark leading beneath the rear door and said the sack had been dragged in from the kitchen yard, but Mercer accused him of inventing another excuse. When Keller refused to name an innocent man, Mercer struck him twice and knocked him against a stack of grain bins. A metal scoop fell behind the bins, revealing a thin trail of lamp oil running toward the small heating stove, where the flame had begun licking along the wooden wall. Keller shouted a warning and tried to reach the stove, but Mercer mistook the movement for an attack and drove him down with the rifle stock. The oil ignited beneath the lowest bin, and fire climbed the boards while smoke closed around the only door. Mercer pulled at the front latch, but a warped beam dropped across it and trapped them inside. Keller wrapped the white cloth around his bleeding hand, lifted the hot stovepipe away from the wall, and kicked open a low ventilation panel near the floor. The opening was too narrow for Mercer's shoulders, so Keller dragged 2 grain sacks beneath the rear window and ordered the guard to climb. Mercer broke the glass with his rifle, but falling shelves blocked Keller from following and forced him toward the burning center of the shed. Outside, Mercer could have left, yet he reached through the window and caught Keller's wrist while 2 prisoners pulled from behind. They dragged Keller through as the roof collapsed. Then soldiers searched the yard and found the stolen flour hidden beneath a kitchen cart used by Sergeant Lewis's work crew. Captain Reeves suspended the punishment and ordered a full investigation, but Keller was placed in isolation because the cloth in his coat remained unexplained. As guards led him away, the older prisoner he had helped opened his shirt and revealed a deep knife wound, showing that the missing flour was only the first part of something far more dangerous. Captain Reeves began the investigation by separating the kitchen workers and ordering every cart unloaded beside the mess hall. Beneath a false wooden floor, the guards found ration cards, tobacco, and 3 bottles of morphine wrapped in flour cloth, proving that the stolen sack had been used to hide a larger trade. The wounded prisoner, Emil Brandt, was carried to the infirmary, where the doctor discovered that the knife had entered below his ribs and remained untreated for hours. Brandt said he had been attacked after refusing to move medicine through the kitchen, but he lost consciousness before giving the attacker's name. Reeves brought Keller from isolation and asked him to identify the white cloth from his coat. Keller explained that Brandt had slipped it to him during the night with a message sewn inside, and when the stitches were cut, the cloth revealed numbers matching storage shelves in the infirmary. Sergeant Lewis claimed Keller had created the message to protect himself, then produced a prisoner named Franz Adler who accused Keller of organizing the thefts. Adler described secret meetings, hidden payments, and a plan to poison a guard, but Keller noticed flour packed beneath Adler's fingernails despite his assignment in the laundry. Reeves ordered Adler searched, and guards found a kitchen key, a sharpened spoon, and a folded map of the medicine room inside his boot. Adler broke from the search line, overturned a table, and ran into Barack 7 before the guards could close the door. Inside the barack, Adler seized a young prisoner and pressed the sharpened spoon against his throat, demanding the outer gate be opened. Keller entered through a rear window, while Mercer held the other prisoners against the walls and prevented them from rushing the hostage. Keller pulled a blanket from a bunk and threw it across the hanging lamp, darkening the room long enough for the hostage to drop beneath Adler's arm. Mercer drove a bench between them, and Keller trapped Adler's wrist against the floor until the guards secured him. The captured kitchen key opened a locked cabinet containing letters stolen from prisoners, lists of family addresses, and records of food taken as payment for information. Reeves discovered that men had been forced to surrender rations before receiving mail that should have been delivered freely. Adler offered to identify the guards involved if Reeves protected him from the prisoners, but someone fired through the infirmary window before he could sign a statement. The bullet missed Adler and struck the medicine cabinet, shattering bottles across the floor and proving that an armed accomplice still moved freely inside the camp. Reeves sealed the gates and placed Mercer beside Keller because the prisoner had become both witness and target. That evening, a coded note appeared beneath Keller's food tray, warning that Brandt would die before morning unless Keller destroyed the shelf numbers hidden in the white cloth. Keller showed the threat to Mercer, who carried it directly to Captain Reeves instead of returning it to the evidence room. Reeves moved Brandt into a guarded office, but the camp doctor warned that the prisoner needed surgery and that the remaining morphine could not be trusted after the shooting shattered the sealed cabinet. A military ambulance was requested from the nearest hospital, yet heavy rain washed out the southern road and delayed every vehicle outside the camp. Reeves ordered Mercer to drive a supply truck north while Keller accompanied Brandt because he alone knew which prisoners might intercept the transfer. Before the truck reached the outer gate, a guard found the fuel line cut and the spare can filled with water. Keller led Mercer to the laundry boiler, where hot fuel had been stored for emergency generators, and they filled 2 containers while soldiers searched for the saboteur. The truck left under armed escort, but a prison work crew rolled a timber wagon across the road and blocked the convoy near the quarry. Several prisoners scattered into the trees, while one man climbed onto the truck and tried to pull Brandt from the rear. Keller struck the attacker with the wooden frame of the stretcher, and Mercer drove through the wagon before more men reached them. The escort jeep lost a wheel in the collision, leaving the truck alone as rain turned the road into deep mud. At the river bridge, floodwater tore loose a support and dropped the center span several feet below the roadway. Mercer stopped short of the gap. Then Keller and the doctor carried Brandt onto a farm door while 2 guards stretched a rope between the broken rails. Halfway across, the weakened planks split beneath one guard and threw him into the current. Mercer released the rope, jumped from the bank, and caught the man against a fallen branch while Keller tied Brandt's stretcher to the bridge and pulled both soldiers toward the shallows. The delay cost Brandt the strength to speak clearly, but he pressed a brass key into Keller's hand and gave the number of a locker at the railway depot. He died before they reached the hospital, and the doctor recorded the loss as the direct result of stolen medicine and the sabotaged road. Reeves opened the locker that night and found Adler's complete account book, along with American military forms signed by Sergeant Lewis. The pages showed that Lewis had sold real medicine outside the camp, replaced it with diluted chemicals, and used stolen letters to control prisoners who knew too much. Military police searched Lewis's quarters and found burned envelopes in the stove, but the transfer authorization was missing from every office file. Reeves sent a telegraph requesting confirmation, and the line went dead moments after the operator reported that someone had cut the cable beyond the perimeter. The discovery produced immediate arrests, but Keller received new orders transferring him to another camp before he could testify. Mercer read the document and noticed the district seal was genuine, leaving no lawful reason to stop the convoy scheduled to take Keller away at sunrise. Before sunrise, Keller was placed in a transfer truck with 19 prisoners, while Mercer received sealed orders to escort them to a rail depot 70 miles away. Captain Reeves objected because Keller remained the principal witness, but the district seal forced him to release the convoy before headquarters answered the broken telegraph. 20 miles from camp, a fallen tree blocked the forest road, and two uniformed military policemen directed the driver toward an abandoned quarry. Mercer noticed that their jeep carried no unit number, yet one man displayed papers bearing the correct convoy route and ordered the prisoners unloaded for inspection. Keller recognized the second man as Harlan, a delivery driver listed in Adler's account book, and warned Mercer in German so the imposters would not understand. Another escort mistook the words for an escape signal, struck Keller with his rifle, and allowed Harlan's men to close around the convoy. The imposters opened fire, disarmed the guards, and forced prisoners and soldiers into a stone-cutting shed. Harlan announced that the truck would be burned and every body placed near the road, making the attack appear to be a German escape that had ended in a firefight. Mercer worked a loose nail from the wall and passed it behind him to Keller, who opened the wire around his wrists and freed the nearest prisoners. Several men wanted to rush the door, but Keller ordered them to move a heavy or cart onto the rails instead. Two prisoners crawled through a drainage channel and reached the quarry machinery beyond the shed. They released a suspended load of gravel, which crashed across the road, buried the imposters' jeep to its axles, and cut off their planned escape. Harlan entered the shed to regain control, and Mercer drove the cart into his legs as Keller pulled the pistol from his hand. The prisoners poured outside, but three gunmen climbed the quarry tower and fired down on the yard, preventing anyone from reaching the convoy radio. Mercer ran toward the fuel truck to draw their aim, while Keller used Harlan's pistol to shoot the cables supporting an empty stone bucket. The bucket dropped across the tower stairs, destroyed the lower platform, and trapped the gunmen above the yard without striking them. The surviving guards recovered their rifles and surrounded the tower, while the prisoners blocked every path through the quarry. Harlan tried to burn the account book he had taken from Mercer's case, but Keller knocked the match away and dragged the evidence from beneath his coat. When district military police arrived, they arrested Harlan's group and discovered that Sergeant Lewis had forged the transfer order to remove Keller before testimony began. The prisoner who had entered the convoy under suspicion returned to camp under armed protection, while Mercer was ordered to guard the man he had beaten because Keller now held the evidence that could convict American soldiers and expose every official who had protected them. Keller returned to camp inside an armored escort, where military police had already arrested Lewis and 3 civilian drivers. Reeves sent him directly to the administration building, and investigators spread the rescued account book, forged transfer papers, and stolen letters across a long table. Lewis denied selling medicine and claimed the payments had purchased supplies the Army refused to provide. The doctor placed the contaminated bottles beside him and showed that several prisoners had received industrial fluid, while sealed morphine left the camp in civilian trucks. A clerk brought Keller the letter taken from the railway locker, along with a payment notice for his son's surgery in Germany. The Swiss Relief Office had received no confirmation from Keller, and the guarantee would expire at midnight unless an American officer verified his identity by radio. District officers refused to open a private channel for a prisoner while the criminal inquiry remained active. Lewis watched the clock and demanded a lawyer, knowing the delayed message could cost Keller the only chance to help his family. Mercer removed his guard badge, placed it on the table, and admitted that he had beaten Keller before examining the evidence. He declared that he would give the same statement to military investigators and newspapers unless the radio was opened immediately. Reeves accepted responsibility and led Keller into the communications room. where an operator contacted the Red Cross relay. Keller dictated the required details, and Mercer signed the guarantee while headquarters waited for confirmation from the Swiss office. Before the reply arrived, Lewis seized the account book, struck the clerk with a chair, and ran into the records basement. He locked the steel door, poured heating fuel over the files, and set fire to the pages linking him to the dead prisoners. Smoke forced the building to evacuate, but Lewis became trapped when a burning cabinet collapsed across the basement exit. Mercer ordered everyone away from the fuel drums, while Keller took a fire axe and entered through a coal chute beneath the rear wall. Keller crawled below the smoke, pulled Lewis through the narrow opening, then returned for the account book and threw it into a water barrel before the ceiling fell. Military police carried Lewis away in chains, and the soaked pages were sealed as permanent evidence. Investigators photographed Mercer's injured hand, Keller's burned sleeve, and the rescued ledger before witnesses signed every page. Reeves then canceled all transfer orders connected to Lewis and restored the food, mail, and medical privileges taken from Barack 7. The radio operator emerged with confirmation that Keller's guarantee had been accepted and that his son's operation would proceed the next morning. Mercer approached with the white cloth recovered from the grain shed, and Keller thanked him for the beating because those blows had trapped them together beside the first fire, where the hidden crimes finally began to surface. 3 months later, Keller stood at the camp gate with release papers in one hand and a Red Cross telegram confirming that his son had survived the operation in the other. Mercer returned the strip of white cloth from the grain shed, now washed and folded inside an envelope. Keller tore it into 2 pieces, kept one, and placed the other beneath Mercer's badge. When the gate opened, Keller walked through without turning back, while Mercer carried the cloth for the rest of his service as proof that a violent mistake could still lead a man toward the truth. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WW2 stories.